It is Monday, April 12th, 2021, and this is the Iconography Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Greg McMillan, and with me is my co-host and good friend, Dave Bodner. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Greg. How's it going today?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all.
We're
slow and steadily creeping into spring up here in Canada, which is a good thing. Starting to see some flowers and whatnot.
Well, that's always a good thing, yeah.
Yeah. But it's still, we had a day where it was, I'll bet you, probably mid-70s there last week. But then it cooled down again. Now we're getting our typical, I'm going to say around 50s, 60s weather. So.
Okay, so cold enough in the morning where you have to bundle, well, morning or probably for you when you get off of work, since you got late nights. But first thing in the day where it's cold enough, you have to wear a jacket, but the afternoon where it's pleasant enough, you kind of don't, you can leave it at home type thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just a mixed bag of temps. So, but we're used to it. So, this week we are going to each take a turn at taking the microphone here, and I'm going to talk about attachment lenses and how to use them and what to use them for and things like that. But first, you're going to talk a little bit about color.
Right, and what really sparked this was what we were just bringing up about spring coming back and color starting to come back in general. The fact that when you normally talk about colorful photography, at least nature photography or landscape, everyone immediately thinks fall, leaves, which are amazing, especially, let's say up north in New England area or other places. It's got, the kaleidoscope of color. But
right, yeah.
When you start to see things like the green patches start hitting and the flowering trees, especially after months of kind of brown, and this is one thing that kind of gets to me, and this is little rant, not major rant, little rant. All the Christmas songs that you hear, the pop, they talk about the winter wonderland and how great it is to be around snow. And you hear those in October, November, and all the way through December. Well, for a lot of places, at least in the States, you don't get heavy winter weather in October, November, or even early December a lot of times.
Yeah, not even up here.
No. I mean, I remember when I was in college, I had a roommate for the quote-unquote fall semester who was just came up for a semester from Mexico City. And he said, I've never seen snow in person. Where's the snow at? And I had to explain to him, well, fall semester generally is pretty nice, because you generally have your last week at the very early part of December. So nothing really hits. Where your worst weather is normally the quote unquote spring semester, because it's January, February, March, ending in really early May before anything starts to regrow again.
Yeah.
Even down, I was in West Virginia, and even that's not too far away from Pittsburgh or how the weather's that much different. So it's kind of had to explain to them, yeah, if you want to have snow, you got to come up here in spring semester, which doesn't make much sense. But so, the fall and the color in the winter, in the fall kind of follows a whole bunch of green and nice warm weather. And then you get the pretty colors with a little bit brisk versus spring color, where it pops up out of here seeing brown stick, or as Matt Hoffman said, stick weather.
Yeah, stick
where all you
season,
have is
yeah.
a bunch of brown. Exactly. So now you have these pops of colors, which of course sometimes makes it hard to breathe because of the pollen and allergies. But it is a nice little pop up where I'm noticing, when you're out driving or going for a walk, you're starting to see not only it isn't just one shade of green with the new growth. A lot of times it's different shades depending on when the growth starts or the different trees and the different flowers. So that's one thing I've noticed in terms of not just the flowers in general. Like we have a couple hyacinths in our backyard, and we have a lilac bush where I can go and do a little macro shots and try to get up close to get color, but just the colors in general. So I thought I mentioned that, not only to keep an eye out for color when you're doing photography or just out there, but the one thing that at least the older phones, like it's kind of weird to say the older phones like the 10, which is the newer design, if you will, compared to the buttons, but a lot of times they can get a little muted with the colors just because, phones still don't have the dynamic range of the human eye. So you may see something and it may pop and you're like, that is just beautiful pop. But you look at it on your screen, you're like, that's not popping like I thought it would. Which I've noticed happens with color more than white balance being off. Especially if you want to say you want to show off and say, this was an amazing shot. This was an amazing view. I want to share it. And hey, look at this amazing thing. You look at the picture when you first look at it, you're like, that's not as amazing as I thought. So just knowing that what you have when you're doing color, knowing what you see in your eye and what you've seen when you're out there may not 100% match what is being captured, and knowing that you may have to do some editing to actually match either the feeling you got off of it or the actual image that you saw.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because some people want to put out, like when I say put out, I mean like reproduce, I guess you could say, what they actually saw, like you said. But then there's that artistic side where you can just let your imagination go and pretty much do whatever you want with it, even change the color.
Exactly. That's why I still do most of my editing in the built-in Photos app, but my next level up is Polar. And one thing I like is that they do have the ability to edit individual colors.
Yeah.
So, and I've noticed like one picture I took recently, and it was a high tension power line, or at least the pole, not necessarily the line, but the pole, where I looked at it and it was this rusty orangey red, and it was a blue sky. So just the contrast between those two colors. And, the tree, there was a good amount of green in the trees with the new growth. So you had the green and the blue, and you had the orangey red. And, it just kind of, the not necessarily the shapes, but the colors and the contrast between the colors kind of caught me. And when I took the picture, of course, even with when we talked about zoom early in an earlier episode, I didn't want to over zoom and get pixelated or use the digital zoom too much. But the problem is, it still didn't feel the image. So after even doing that adjustment, I had to go in and say, okay, well, I want that shade of orange kind of boosted up, but I don't want, this part, because I just didn't want to boost colors in general. That is one good thing that the iPhone's good at, is that it generally does a pretty good job with getting accurate color reproduction. It's not going to just say, oh, I'm going to, Apple's engineers, and this is all, personal preference. I don't want to say there's anything right or wrong. It's all personal preference, but Apple's engineers tend not to overblow images just to make the colors extra poppy.
Yeah, they do a lot of color calibration. Yeah.
But like I said, with these, I wanted to have a little extra pop, a little more pop than reality, if you will. So that's why I did some of the editing there. But also, it got me thinking about going out and looking for colors. Even in terms of, because the new growth, the leaves coming out haven't completely overwhelmed everything. There's still a good amount of sticks that you can see. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily using, I know there's apps out there and I used to use them a little bit more. And I know it's can be a little bit of where people really don't like the effect where you have everything kind of grayed out in one color popping. I know it can be overdone, and if it's done, it's like everything else. If it's done in a good time, and it's hard to say when that is, or if it's not overdone, having that shot where only, like when my niece got married, we did a shot, and the only thing we left in color was her bouquet.
Oh, yeah.
And everything else was gray. And it just really, really popped. It was just but if you do all your shots like that, or if you do, I'm just going to do this to do this, and you don't think it's adding anything, it can get a little much.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, so, but there are ways on different apps to say, okay, well, I'm going to tone down these other colors. Not necessarily make them black and white, just tone them down a little bit to make the other colors pop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that artistic approach.
Exactly. And I know, you could go out and study color theory and get the color wheel. I never taken a class in photography. I know people have studied and they know, this color goes with this and this goes with this. Yeah. But sometimes it's good. I mean, and trust me, it's good to have the additional information. But I think sometimes it's good also to pull out and say, these two are clashing colors, but it works here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me, a lot of it is, and again, the one advantage we have with phones is, I say the advantage of all digital photography, and which includes the phones, is if you take 30 shots, you can throw away 26 of them and have 4 really good shots, but you're not really missing anything by having all the extra shots.
Yeah, that's right.
And for us old people, we remember where if you took a shot and you had to pay for it to be developed to see how it was going to turn out if you didn't develop it yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And, you had to give it to the little person who lived in the little building in the parking lot and wait a week and a half for it to come back.
Yeah. We did a lot more thinking before we shot back then.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's just click, click, click.
Click, yeah. And you know what? Sometimes there's good and bad to everything. There's good and bad to everything. But for me, when I'm looking at colors, like I said, especially around spring, they're just starting to pop out. Mm-hmm. And I like to highlight where the colors pop out. And sometimes you can look, and sometimes you have to look for the situation. It's a little bit easier with the flowers coming out, like we were saying, and the trees in bloom, or it could just be something like maybe a house has a particular awning on it. That's very colorful. That really stands out. Or if you have like a downtown area, or a little shop area where the shop actually stands out because of the color. Yeah. And that's something that not only using the color adjustment, but making it where your framing and your focusing actually makes the colors pop even without touching the color.
Yeah, the composition. So
Exactly. And like I said, the framing and how you're going to cut it and how far you are away so you can see what's around it or not around it. And it's just something to keep in mind as you're going out and thinking, because I think a lot of people just, even if you're doing basic photography, basic street photography, I just want to go out there and show what's out there. Having that little extra pop of color or highlight can make a big difference.
Yeah, so you're isolating that color. You're kind of getting it to separate itself from everything else.
Exactly. Because I know, like, one thing that Pittsburgh has a lot of are bridges, and most of the bridges are painted a very bright yellow. So
okay.
so they can be used a lot. There's actually two local people I follow on Instagram. One's called City Life Adventures, and I'm trying to get the other person's Instagram here because but they photo a lot in terms of, let's say, the local bridges using reflections, and the yellow in the bridges really stand out. Crazy City Lady is the other one. So it's Crazy City Lady and City Life Adventures. They're both local Pittsburgh photographers. And a lot of their photos have the bridges in them. And it's not color adjusted where they're like toning down and making the yellow boosted. It's just how it shows up naturally. And it really emphasizes the bridges with just the color. So it can make a big difference just using that. To highlight what you want to highlight.
Yeah, that'd be kind of like the yellow cabs in New York City. They sure stand out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Funny enough, when we bought our RAV4 a couple of years ago, we were going to get a dark blue one. And now I don't know about anywhere else, but around here, most of the vehicles seem to be black, white, any shade of gray. If it's a blue, it's generally a dark blue. There's just the color of vehicles just doesn't seem to be very there just doesn't seem to be a very wide range. There's some reds, some dark reds, a lot of burgundies and things like that. But we ended up getting one the color is called Blue Flame. So if you look at the flame in like a Bunsen burner or, on a gas stove or even a candle, that blue part of that flame, that's what color this thing is. And it stands out in a parking lot, at least around here anyway. So, that's color isolation right there.
Yeah. Actually, I just went to Toyota website because I remember you sharing pictures of it, but just to refresh myself here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's almost a dark teal almost on the computer.
Yeah. It kind of depends on your screen, I guess.
It's not a light blue where it's like a baby blue, but it's a lighter, like you said, it's not most blues are almost a earthy tone Moro blue or very dark, where that is it's bright, and yeah, that would definitely stand out in a crowd.
Yeah, and a buddy of mine said it was Petty blue, so that would be like Richard Petty's race car in NASCAR.
Okay, yeah.
It is close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, any more thoughts on color and isolating it?
I would say that's around it for now. Just it's just saying that you don't necessarily have to go the editing route to have the full isolation, but just seeing what's out there that you can isolate, just on how the color may pop on its own. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting topic, especially this time of year, like for us in the Northern Hemisphere where it's spring. And well, actually, for the Southern Hemisphere, they're approaching autumn. So, there's opportunities to isolate color just about anywhere in the world now that has color. It doesn't have to be just plants and trees. It could be, like we talked about, cars. Could be like, and with your example in Pittsburgh, bridges. Just look for any way at all to isolate color, and make it stand out. And, when you mentioned the Photos app, the editing functions in the Photos app, I'm starting to, I've been using it a little more since I've been using Apple Pro Raw. And one thing that I've been finding is that sometimes it just doesn't have what I need. So I end up going to, Darkroom, Snapseed, some of these other ones that have those extra little functions and features in them. And Polar, even with, you can isolate the sky or isolate the foreground and things like that. So, but yeah, there's, that's what I love about this type of thing. This iPhone photography is there's so many options and opportunities for us. And so that kind of brings me to the second part of the show here, where I'm going to talk about some, give my thoughts on add-on lenses and like accessory lenses for mobile phones. And this isn't just for iPhone. This is Samsung, LG, just about any mobile phone or even tablet. You have the opportunity to try this. And the main reason that anyone would want to do this, in my opinion, and that's how I started with it, it was to expand on the capabilities of the phone's cameras. So most phones, if it has just one camera, it probably just has a wide angle. And you can make that wide angle even wider by putting I use moment lenses, so I'm going to use that example. My wide angle moment lens takes my wide angle camera and basically turns it into an ultra wide, which is, really, really good for landscape photography. I don't know, there's probably many use cases for it, but, in my case, that's the main reason I would use it. And, you can put it on, you could put a wide angle on the telephoto camera of a phone that has that telephoto and change how things look from there. There's endless possibilities for expanding the capabilities of the phone's cameras, and even going macro. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute here, but shooting macro just opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So, one of the things that I've discovered, and this is through kind of the help of Moment, the company that makes these lenses that I use, they put some of this stuff on the internet. So the iPhone, if it has two lenses, the wide angle camera is going to have the better aperture. The telephoto camera has a smaller aperture, which lends to just slighter, lesser quality images. So something that I do and something that Moment talked about was, if you got one of their telephoto lenses and put it on the wide angle camera, that would give you pretty close to the same focal length or viewing angle and whatnot of the telephoto camera on the phone. But what it does is it uses the wider aperture of the wide angle camera. And this is all going to sound mixed up, but if you listen to it again, maybe it might make more sense. But anyway, with the wide camera with a telephoto lens on it, you're going to get better image quality than you would with the telephoto camera by itself. And you're going to get the same reach, I guess you could say, like the same zoom capability. And so what that does is it gives you a cleaner image because you're using a wider aperture. It's letting more light in for a faster shutter speed for a sharper image. The only caveat to that I've noticed, at least with my 12 Pro Max, is that the ultra wide camera, even though it's got a smaller aperture than the wide angle, and say I put the wide angle lens on the wide angle camera to get that ultra wide type of look, it softens it up just a little bit because of all that extra glass that the light has to go through.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, using these lenses, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The better quality the lens, I mean, the better luck you're going to have for sure. And we'll get into the different, excuse me, the different kinds of lenses here in a minute. But it's so hard to explain without actually being able to show images. The difference between putting a lens over the wide angle and a lens over the telephoto. But excuse me, on the iPhones, you cannot put a lens over the ultra wide. It just doesn't work. So there's that. Yeah, and when Moment puts their cases out, they don't even provide a mount over the ultra wide because it just doesn't make sense to do that. So that you can only mount the lens over the wide and the telephoto.
Is there a reason? I wonder if
Well, I think because the ultra wide camera is so wide itself that you would just see black around the outsides. You wouldn't see much of the image area, I don't think.
Right.
Now, maybe tomorrow when it's daylight again, I'm going to just hold a lens over it and see what happens, but I don't expect to have any luck. But, and then there's macro. I was going to touch on macro because macro is, you can get lost in macro for hours.
Oh yeah.
And if I was to go in the summer, if I was to go into a flower bed, I can get probably 25 different shots of the same flower, focusing on edges of the petals or the where the pollen is in the center and things like that. There's so many different opportunities and options when shooting macro. The macro can go over on the iPhone. I'll say for the iPhone, the macro can go over the telephoto and the wide, but you have to use a camera app that can manually select the lens. I won't get into why the Apple camera won't do that because it's kind of a long story, but in order to do that, you have to use a third-party camera app. And when you put the macro lens over the telephoto camera, like the 2x camera, but on the 2.5x on the 12 Pro Max, the depth of field is so shallow. It is so shallow that it's very hard to actually get a good shot in focus. So with apps like Camera Plus 2 and Halide, I know there's many other apps out there that have this feature. It's called focus peaking. And what it does is it lights up the area of focus, usually in green. So if you see the edges of the petal, say the line is on the green, lights up the edge of the petal, that part's in focus. That's when you can hit the shutter, get your shot, and Bob's your uncle. You got a sharp macro shot. But the depth of field is so small that it's a tricky thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that too, where I'm trying to take sometimes focal. I'm trying to get macros of different flowers and using not a lens add-on, but using the Camera Plus macro feature with the stability, because it's so, like you said, just a little bit of movement in your hand. If you're trying to do a handheld, can just ruin a macro because you're so focused, so tight that it does make it really hard to get that just right. And like you said, focus peaking does help tremendously on that too.
Yeah. And those are a couple of different use cases for these lenses. There's different kinds of these lenses too. Like, I would say the three big players in this game are Moment, Sandmark, and Olloclip. Now, Olloclip, they've been around for quite some time, and they make all three of these companies make really good lenses. Olloclip is just what it says it is. It's a clip. It clips over the lens. And the one thing I find with these clip-on, there's a ton of different companies that make clip-on lenses. And the biggest challenge of using a clip-on lens is getting that lens perfectly centered over the camera. Because if it's off to the side, like just a little bit, you're going to have one side of it could possibly vignette a little bit, and the other side could possibly be blurry. So if you're using clip-on lenses, just make sure it's dead center over the camera. And you could look down through the lens itself, and you could probably see the camera in there, or the glass and whatnot. You'll see whether it's on center or not. But that's the biggest thing, is to make sure it's on center. Now, Sandmark, their lenses are screw mount, where you actually thread it into the case. Now, Moment and Sandmark, you have to have a case for your phone, and the case has built-in mounts right in it over the cameras. So the Sandmark ones, they screw on with a thread, and the Moment ones are like a bayonet mount. You just put it in, turn it a quarter turn, and it's locked into place. I would say both are very, very good, very stable, and line the lens up over the camera perfectly. So when you're looking at possibly getting some of these lenses, do your homework, do some research on them, and find which one's better for you. By all means, get the best one that you can afford. Don't go beyond your means just getting these little lenses. Get the best ones that you can afford. Like if there's 2 or 3 different kinds of clip-on lenses, usually the more you pay for them, the better they're going to be. So kind of keep that in mind. Watch out for advertisements. I've seen so many advertisements for those little, they look like little telescopes, but they're lenses, and they clip onto a phone, and they're supposed to bring things way off into the distance, really close. I've never seen one. I've never tried one, but I can almost guarantee they're not that good. Generally, they're very low priced, and I have seen some reviews that people have written about those things saying they're nothing but garbage. So be very careful of advertisements that you see for these little lenses. And
also, as I've heard other people say, you can't fool physics.
No, that's right.
There's a reason why, if you look on the sidelines of sports games, and you see these people with these lenses which need to have supports because they're too heavy to hold up.
Oh yeah.
And they're
the lens sits on the tripod, not the camera. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's how you get these amazingly, and these are big cameras. These aren't, trying to put something, and we've seen attachments you can do that are like 5 to 10 inches long zoom lenses you can put on an iPhone. Which, I'm sorry, looks ridiculous. It may work good.
Yeah, with the right hardware, yeah.
Right. It still looks ridiculous, but to get that kind of zoom, you really either need a lot of computational power, like supposedly what Samsung and Google's occasionally can do. I don't want to discount them 100% because I don't have personal experience. Or you need a long, big lens, because also the more zoom you are, the less light comes in.
Yeah.
So you have
unless you're going to pay $50,000 for a lens.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, if you're trying to add a zoom lens onto your phone, it can zoom so much. But you add zoom, you're taking away light. And if you take away light, you take away some of the sharpness that you may want to gain by getting closer.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you can't fool physics. Light acts a certain way when it goes through glass. That has not really changed in a couple hundred years on how we understand how that works.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a very valid point. So, on that note, don't expect, if you're using, say you put I'll use my examples again. I got a Moment tele lens. It says 58 millimeters on it. So over the 1x camera on my iPhone, it is supposed to look roughly like a 58 millimeter lens on a DSLR. It's supposed to give you that look, or like kind of that zoom range or whatever you want to call it. But don't expect to do sports photography or bird photography, things like that with these lenses, because they just don't have that kind of reach. They're just to, expand on the capabilities of the existing cameras a little bit. The wide angle, it does a pretty good job of making things wider, and I can't speak for the Sandmark or the Olloclip or any of these other ones. I can only speak for a moment because that's what I use, and I will say that the Moment Wide has pretty good image quality, edge to edge. It may get a tick soft on the outer edges of the frame, but for the most part, depending on what you're taking pictures of, I guess it does look pretty good. The telephoto is pretty good all around because it's cutting out a lot of that wide area and kind of narrowing the angle of view. But don't use these things trying to think you're going to get things that are way far away brought way in. Even putting the telephoto lens over the 2x camera, or in my case the 2.5x camera on my iPhone, you just don't get the image quality. You get things brought in, pretty decent, but the image quality is just not quite that good. It's just not that good. Because again, the telephoto camera on the on the iPhone has a smaller aperture than the wide angle. So I mean, it brings it into something like, I'm just throwing a number out there, like a 200, maybe 210 millimeter zoom lens, but it's just not. It's the image quality is just not that great. So there's certain combinations to use these things on the phones, and I mean, you play around with it, try different things if you have a set of lenses, and see what gives you the best results, and then just stick to those combinations. But they are fun to use. They're fun to play around with. I mean, my favorite is the macro, and so what I have is I have the macro, I have the wide angle, I have a telephoto, and I have an anamorphic. And the anamorphic is used for doing video, and what it does is it compresses the image. So you have like in movies that you watch on TV, it has the black bars on the top and bottom, but the image still looks great because if you use Filmic Pro or the Moment camera app, both those apps have that function in them where they can de-squeeze the image and make it look normal, but you got that nice wide view. And the other nice thing about the anamorphic lens is it gives you that nice Abrams flare that you see in those Star Trek movies that came out a few years ago. Excuse me. And so, I mean, it's kind of a cool effect that you get from them. And, they're a lot of fun to play around with. I don't know how often I use them. Probably not very often. I would say I use the macro more than anything. But, yeah, they're a lot of fun to play with. And my first set of lenses was a little set of, they're from a company called ProMaster. ProMaster makes a little bit of everything for photography accessories. And I bought these lenses. It was like a 5-in-1 kit. There was a wide angle, a little telephoto, fisheye, macro, and a polarizer. The only one out of that kit, it was less than $70. So that's for 5 lenses. So like I said, the money you pay is, you get what you pay for. But it was a really cool little kit to start with, and it got me hooked. I never thought I would put lenses on a phone before I got this case. And then when I put them on the phone and played around with them, especially with the little macro, it gave me the pretty decent image quality compared to all the rest of them. And it got me hooked on them. And then that's when I started buying moment lenses as time went on.
Mm. Yeah, I know that one person I think that we both follow, Ithalu.
Yes.
Her macro shot. And I just looked her up, and she it looks like she's using moment lenses now. In addition to her...
Yeah, I think she uses Holoclip and moment.
Yeah. Yeah, where in the past she used, I think, I forget the company she used, but her photos are just mind-blowing in terms of her macro photography. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when we were on Tiny Shutter, we could have picked her images every week for pick of the week.
Yeah, and I would say anyone who wants to see macro photos and videos with iPhones, because all her shots are with iPhones, it's Itha, ITHA _MAR. And her shots are just, they're in my mind, they're mind-blowing.
Yeah. Now, I did do an interview, quote unquote, with her back when this podcast used to be called the Artful IPhoneography Interviews. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which episode it was offhand, but I'll put it in the show notes. And when I was trying to get her to do the interview, she was just too shy to actually come on the call and do it. So what I did was I sent her some questions, and she wrote back with the answers, and then I just went on solo and did the interview. So it's a fairly short one. I think it might only be 15 or 20 minutes, but if you want to learn a little bit more about Ithalu and her shooting style and things like that, I can't remember what all the interview had in it, but I'll put that episode in the show notes just as a reminder so people can check it out. But she is absolutely amazing when it comes to macro.
And honestly, stuff like that's one of the positives of social media, is seeing what other people are doing and then getting inspired by it.
Yeah, for sure. God, I'm trying to think of who else really uses these lenses a lot. I follow so many people on Instagram and whatnot that I just can't think of anyone. Like nothing really comes to mind for anyone that really uses them a lot. But I will put the links to Moment, Sandmark, and Holoclip in the show notes. You can check them out, have a look at there's always sample images on their websites of what these lenses produce, and I'm sure they're going to be edited to look really good. That's a given, but I guess that's about it for lenses. Anything else you want to bring up, Dave?
Not really. Just, I think honestly the biggest thing is just get out there and try stuff. And don't be afraid, as much as social media can be a horrible, horrible place, which that's unfortunately, people can be horrible people. In general, if you post stuff out there and ask for, you go out there, you say, I'm trying something, I'm looking for input. You may not get responses. It honestly depends on, how many people follow you on social media and where you post at. But a lot of the responses for most people will be positive. So, if you're looking to try something and, go out there, experiment and get feedback.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, here's a case in point for that right there, Dave, is Shane Mostyn in Australia, who was on the show here not too long ago, has a Facebook group, and he encourages people to put things on there. And if you want help getting it edited properly or whatever, actually he has a Discord channel for that. But I mean, he's always offering to help people with their editing to make it look better. And if anybody has any questions about anything in that group, like a lot of it has to do with astrophotography, because that's what a lot of his stuff is, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, it could be about anything. So I've seen people on that Facebook group. I think it's called Bloody Legends, Shane Mostyn Photography, because he gets the Bloody Legends part from on his YouTube videos at the beginning. He says, if you've go ahead and subscribe, but if you've already subscribed, you're a bloody legend. But yeah, he's always offering to, when he gets time, and he's a working man. So, when he gets time, he'll take somebody's image and help them edit it and, try to make it better suited for what they're looking for and things like that. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of people out there that are doing good for, in the artistic world. Now, one thing that I will bring up is, when we were on Tiny Shutter, I was a real proponent for an app called Dayflash. And I had high hopes for it because I think it was a nice looking app and all this stuff. They were trying to get some traction in the social media space, and the one thing that was nice about their app was that they had full page, like full screen images of the photos that you put on there. But long story short, they lost traction when it came to getting funding to keep going. So they're shutting down sometime in May. I think it's May 25th or something like that. The app will no longer be there. So, I mean, it's not even in the Canadian App Store right now. So if you're on Dayflash, you've probably already been notified. I've actually been away from Dayflash for quite a while now because I wasn't getting out of it what I thought I would get out of it. There wasn't many mobile users on there that I could kind of, associate with. There was a lot of models and things like that going on there, and I'm more of a landscape guy, so it just wasn't doing anything for me. So I kind of, you couldn't delete your account. That's another thing, is you couldn't delete your account. All you could do is take your pictures off and just let it sit there. So,
you see, I kind of stopped using it after a while. Like you said, a lot of the photos were, and when we actually interviewed the person on Tiny Shutter, something I actually mentioned was I saw less casual photography than I did on Instagram, where I was seeing a lot of photos of, here's the kids out, or I just went to an event and here's a picture of us at the, the local fair when we had local fairs or something on that nature. And I noticed these were they were very high quality photos and a lot of model photos. But unfortunately, nothing, it was like, I'm not saying they were bad, but they just didn't match what I thought I would go. So I just kind of stopped. I just stopped posting without even, and it's like, it's out there, and I guess it's just one of those things that are just going to go. I just kind of fell off my radar until I heard it was shutting down. Yeah. Well, it kind of fell off my radar, like I say, months ago or so, when sometime last year, I think it was, I just started taking all my stuff off there because I just wasn't getting anything out of it for me. Like, it wasn't doing anything for me. I had really no reason to keep going back into the app and things like that. So, it's too bad. They gave it a good go. They say that if the possibility comes up that they can, restart it, maybe if they get enough funding or whatever. But it's so hard to compete with Instagram in the mobile space. It's just so hard. And as much as I hate Facebook, I know I'm still on it, and I'm still on Instagram. But I mean, it's where everybody is. It's you don't have much choice really. If you want to share your images, if you want to be part of a community like that, that's where you have to be. And I guess it is what it is. So, well, Dave, I think that was another good informative program. And I guess we'll tie it off with that. Let us know where everybody can find you. Sure. You can find me as we kind of go down places that we talked about. Instagram, Twitter, SProfPod, and on the Tiny Shutter group. And I joined actually a new group on Facebook. Haven't posted much there, but I'm as Dave Podner Jr. on Facebook. Senior's my dad. He does have an iPhone. He does take pictures, not that often. But if you see a Dave Podner Jr., that would be me on Facebook, but also as Prof Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
All right. And you can find me on Instagram at Macmillan Photo, on Twitter, Macmillan_photo, and just about all the links to wherever I am on the internet is at about.me/Macmillan. So we try to do this show every 2 weeks, and you can find the podcast at iphonography.ca, and that is the actual website now. Before this, I was saying it takes you to a website called artfulipc.com. Well, that is no longer the case. It is iphonography.ca, and that is the true space. And you can get it on the Apple Podcasts app, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, just about anywhere else where you can get a podcast. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you should be able to find it. Just do a search for iPhonography and it should show up. You can find the Artful iPhonography community, which is where this podcast originated from. You can find it on MeWe at artfulipc.club. So I guess until next time, Dave, hopefully we will see more spring colors popping out and a little more sunshine and maybe a little less rain.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully everyone gets a chance to get out and, and I hate, without being too negative, socially still distant. Hopefully everyone can get the vaccine when they get a chance if you can. But still, get out there, enjoy out there, socially distant. We can all enjoy being out there in the nice weather.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. Thanks, Dave. Good talk, and we'll see you on the next one.
Sounds great.
Okay, folks, this is tagged on to the end of the program because Dave just discovered something that is very pertinent to what we were talking about with these lenses. Go ahead, Dave.
No, thanks, Ray. Yeah, I when you were mentioning the different lens companies, I brought up Oloclip just to see what their current product listing was, and right on the website it says we're on hiatus. We're on a hiatus. It says Oloclip is taking this time to refresh what has been a year unlike any other in modern times. The COVID-19 global shutdown has impacted worldwide commerce in unimaginable ways. Our hope is that mankind will soon recover from the devastating outcome of the pandemic. At this time, our products are unavailable for purchase at oloclip.com, and our operations will remain closed indefinitely. Thank you for your precious loyalty and outstanding support. We look forward to a future full of health, enduring love, and success for all. Cheers.
Wow. That's too bad, really. One thing that's kept Moment going is their variety of products and services that they have. And, they have courses, they have tours, adventures, and things like that. Now, I don't know how they've been managing that during COVID, but they have a lot more to their name than just trying to sell lenses. So I think that's why they're doing okay. Sandmark, I don't know. If you go to Sandmark, folks, and look up their stuff, I don't know what you're going to expect to see, but hopefully they're still surviving and thriving just as good as anyone. But so we just thought we'd throw this on the end real quick, and by now you'll probably hear the music for the end of the show going. And but when Dave told me this just after I stopped recording the first time, I thought, okay, this is important enough to hit the record button again and get this on the show. So thanks, Dave, for bringing that up. And on that note, have a good week, folks, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.